I used to think birthdays were simple. Cake, candles, a few awkward hugs, maybe a late-night text from someone who remembered. But this year, it hit differently. I'm Olivia Bennett, 30 years old, startup co-founder, stable career, decent apartment, a life I quietly built while everyone else was busy shining. And yet somehow, I was still the invisible one. A week before Mom's big birthday bash, I got the call. Not from Mom, not from Dad, from Samantha, my sister, the golden child. "Hey, just a heads up," she said, voice syrupy sweet. "We're keeping the party pretty tight this year, like very upscale. Only close family and, important guests." I pressed the phone closer to my ear. "I'm family." There was a beat of silence. Then she laughed, almost nervously. "Yeah, but, you know how you are, always low-key, always simple. You wouldn't exactly blend with the crowd, Liv. It's not personal. It's just presentation. Presentation. Like I was a bad outfit they were trying to hide. I didn't say anything. Just let the words settle, like dust on an old shelf. Samantha filled the silence with more excuses. Mom wanted the best first impression. Her boyfriend's colleagues were coming. It would be awkward if people asked what I did and I couldn't explain it properly. Funny thing is, I could explain it just fine. They just never cared enough to ask. When she finally hung up, I sat on my couch, staring at the phone like it had betrayed me. Outside, the San Diego sun was setting, casting long gold streaks across my living room floor. Everything looked warm. Everything felt cold. I could have fought back, demanded my seat at the table, shoved my accomplishments in their faces. But I didn't. Instead, I just sat there and let the silence thicken around me. Not because I agreed, not because I didn't hurt, but because somewhere deep down, I realized I was tired of asking for a place they were never planning to set for me anyway. Maybe this birthday wasn't about Mom at all. Maybe it was about Samantha. And maybe, just maybe, it was finally time for me to stop showing up where I wasn't welcome. The night before the party, the ocean outside my window sounded restless, like it knew something was off. I curled up on the couch, an old hoodie wrapped around me, sipping cold peppermint tea that I forgot I even made. My phone buzzed on the coffee table, family group chat lighting up with photos, emojis, excitement. Look at the decorations. Can't wait to see everyone. Samantha looks stunning. I stared at the screen for a long time, thumb hovering, not typing anything. I wasn't part of it. I wasn't even missed. Funny how easy it was for them to forget me, considering everything I'd done for them over the years. The emergency loans I wired when Mom's surgery ran over budget. The time I stayed up all night fixing Dad's business proposal so he wouldn't look foolish in front of investors. The holidays I skipped trips with friends just to show up at family dinners no one even remembered I attended. No one ever asked if it was hard for me, if I needed anything, if I was okay. They loved the version of me that could be summoned when needed and disappeared when inconvenient. I set the phone down and pulled my knees up to my chest, staring out at the dark water. The resort was just a few miles south along the coastline. Tomorrow, they'd be toasting under fairy lights and chandeliers, pretending the world was perfect. And I would be here, invisible, forgotten. For a long time, I thought being dependable would eventually earn me a seat at the table. That loyalty would be enough. But tonight, for the first time, I saw it clearly. No matter how much you give, it doesn't matter to people who only see you when they need something. They didn't want me there because my presence reminded them of every quiet sacrifice, every moment they chose someone flashier, easier to explain, more convenient to love. I wasn't the problem. Their blindness was. I looked down at my hands, steady now, not trembling, not angry, just done. Not out of bitterness, but because finally I realized I didn't have to keep showing up for people who never looked for me in the first place. Morning came with no rush, the kind of slow, quiet morning where you could almost pretend nothing had changed. I made coffee, black and sharp, and stood by the window watching the waves roll in and out. Down the coast, just a few miles away, the resort buzzed with preparations. White tents going up, catering trucks arriving, strings of fairy lights stretching between palm trees. They were building a perfect day, a perfect stage, and they didn't even realize it was built on sand, I turned back to my laptop, the screen already awake, blinking softly. My email was open to a draft I'd started last night. A single formal notice addressed to the resort's management team. Simple, direct. Effective immediately, Bennett Travel Technologies would be terminating our partnership and pulling all promotional support. No threats, no accusations, no drama, just a clean break. My hand hovered over the send button for a moment longer than necessary, not because I doubted myself, not because I wanted revenge, but because I finally understood sometimes choosing yourself isn't loud. It's just final. I clicked send, one tiny, decisive action. No fireworks, no applause, just the sound of my own breathing, steady and sure. I closed the laptop gently, not slamming it shut in anger the way I might have years ago. Out of habit, I glanced at my phone. Group texts still flying. Pictures of Samantha's dress fittings, table settings, floral arrangements. Not a word to me. Not even a question of where I was if I was coming. That told me everything I needed to know. This time I wasn't going to beg for a seat at a table where they had already decided I didn't belong. Let them have their perfect picture. Let them smile under chandeliers and pretend everything was just as it should be. I had no intention of crashing their party. I wasn't going to shout across the room demanding recognition. I wasn't going to explain myself to people who never bothered to ask. I was simply done. Not with sadness, not with rage, but with a kind of quiet certainty that tasted almost like peace. And that was something they could never take from me. By mid-afternoon, the messages started rolling in. First, it was Mom. Olivia, the power just flickered. Do you know anyone we can call? Then Samantha. Why is the resort acting weird? Staff is panicking. They're saying something about a contract issue? I didn't reply, not because I wanted to punish them, but because I had nothing left to say. I leaned back in my chair, sipping lukewarm coffee, while the coastal breeze slipped through the open balcony door. Down the shoreline, the glittering white tent sagged slightly against the stiffening wind. The fairy lights that were supposed to twinkle against the sunset flickered once, then died. The resort's sound system hiccuped, then went silent. Confused guests murmured. The event planner ran around frantically, clipboard waving like a white flag. I didn't need to be there to see it all unfold. I could picture it. Samantha, in her designer dress, frozen with a fake smile stretched too tight. Mom trying to herd guests back inside, pretending everything was under control. And standing right at the edge, Samantha's boyfriend, arms crossed, frowning deeper by the minute. He wasn't just embarrassed, he was seeing something he hadn't noticed before. The cracks. Cracks that years of shiny photos and practiced small talk couldn't cover anymore. Word spread fast. The resort had lost a major promotional partner. Everything was unraveling because someone, somewhere, had pulled support quietly but decisively. That someone being me. But no one there knew it. At least, not yet. From my balcony, I could almost hear the rising tension, the polite excuses, the forced laughter straining at the seams. I didn't gloat. I didn't celebrate. I just sat with it. The inevitable collapse of something that was never built to last. They had built their perfect party on the assumption that no matter how they treated me, I would still show up when they needed me. Still smile, still save the day. Not this time. I watched the sun dip lower into the ocean, painting the sky in molten gold and blood orange. And for the first time in a long, long while, I felt light. Not happy, not triumphant, just free. By evening, my phone was buzzing non-stop. Missed calls, voicemails, texts laced with panic and thinly veiled blame. Samantha's first message was short and sharp. Mom's been crying for hours. The guests are furious. You're heartless, Olivia. Then another. Do you have any idea what you've done? I hope you're happy ruining everything. I set the phone face down without answering. I wasn't happy, but I wasn't guilty either. They had built this chaos themselves. I had simply stepped aside and let the cracks show. Later that night, while scrolling through an old playlist I hadn't touched in years, another text popped up, this time from an old college friend who happened to be at the party. Liv, heard a wild story tonight. Words out the resort lost its biggest partner right before the party. Everyone's saying it tanked the event. Some are whispering your name, but honestly, if it's true, good for you. I smiled, not the gloating kind, but the quiet, weary kind. It wasn't a secret anymore. Somehow, without raising my voice, without throwing a scene, without sending a single warning shot, the truth had floated up, undeniable and sharp. I wasn't the villain. I wasn't the heartless one. I was just finished. They had always believed I would stay silent because I was too scared, too soft. But silence can be a kind of roar if you know when to use it. And tonight, my silence had been louder than any accusation I could have thrown. I glanced at the final message from Samantha, rambling and desperate. "You've humiliated me. You've made everyone look down on us. I hope you're proud of yourself." I didn't answer. There was nothing left to explain. The ones who mattered never needed an explanation, and the ones who demanded it wouldn't believe it anyway. I closed the messages without reading further. Outside, the night air smelled like salt and jasmine, crisp and clean. For the first time in years, the noise wasn't inside me anymore. It was behind me, exactly where it belonged. The next morning, the sky over San Diego was a muted, soft gray. No drama, no bright promises, just quiet. I brewed a fresh cup of coffee, wrapped myself in a worn sweater, and sat by the window, watching the city stir awake. Emails chimed softly in the background. Work, life, plans that had nothing to do with yesterday. And I felt still. Not the frozen kind of stillness that comes from heartbreak. The rooted kind. The kind that says, "You survived, you're free." My phone buzzed once more. Another message from Samantha. Another long apology wrapped in excuses, begging me to fix what was broken. I read it slowly. No rush, no anger. Then I set the phone down, face first, and walked away. It wasn't mine to fix. Not anymore. Later that afternoon, I drove north along the coast, windows down, the salt air tangling my hair. No destination, just a need to move forward. Physically, emotionally, spiritually. Somewhere past the cliffs, I pulled over. The ocean stretched wide and endless before me, wild and open, unconcerned with anyone's expectations. I stood there for a while, breathing in the sharp, clean air, feeling the last threads of obligation loosen inside my chest. I had spent years thinking love meant loyalty without limits, thinking family meant sacrifice without thanks. But standing there, with the whole restless ocean in front of me, I realized something simpler. Love isn't supposed to cost you yourself. Respect isn't something you should have to buy with silence. And family, real family, doesn't forget you the minute you're inconvenient. I smiled, a small, real smile that no one needed to see to make it true. I didn't need a dramatic confrontation. I didn't need them to apologize. I didn't even need them to understand. I just needed to keep choosing myself every single day, no matter who showed up or didn't. That would be my real rebirth. Quiet, steady, mine. And this time, I wasn't going back.